Welcome to the CGQP Examinations Technique online workshop. I'm Kenneth Chang. I'm responsible for taking you through the subject, strategic management. Well, the agenda will be that firstly, we will go through some general examinations technique first, and then we will go through the questions sections by sections. That is, we will look at the questions on section A first, and then section B and questions section C, etc. So by going through the different sections, selected questions on these different sections, I hope that you can see the general trend on how these topics will be asked and how you could prepare well for your examinations. Okay, good. Then we can start off with firstly the examinations general techniques first. The first technique that I will say that is important to prepare for your examination is that you have to know a number of things before you go to the examination room. The first thing is that you should know your syllabus well. I will explain why it is important for you to know about your syllabus. And secondly, you should know about your examination structure, the examination format, etc. And then you know what the examiners want from you and how you could answer according to the requirement of the examiner. And let us know your answers. I think these are four main things that you should know before you go to the examination room. So firstly, could I ask if any one of you actually have read your syllabus thoroughly? You need to read the syllabus quite thoroughly. Most of the candidates just flip through the syllabus very casually. They don't just read it word by word, and they just read the study guide or your own notes, and they don't quite understand what is required from you, right, when you are a candidate sitting in the examinations. So let's take a very brief look at the syllabus first, and then before we proceed to do other things. Well, something you may have already know about is this subject. It belongs to the Part 2 program, which is supposedly is a more advanced level thing than the Part 1 program, So you're expected to spend about 200 hours in your study. So even though you have studied strategic management some time ago when you were doing your bachelor degree or other degrees, I think it's worthwhile to revise all these materials because the structure and the focus of the strategic management may be different from that you have studied a few years ago, because we have a different focus. As you can see, we're doing the corporate governance examinations. This is about the governance, so the focus will be quite different from the one you have learned earlier. So even though some of the topics are similar, and even though you are quite familiar with some of the models already, it's still worthwhile to take a look at what is being stressed in this module. Now, firstly, as I've said, this is a Part 2 program. So what is the difference between a Part 1 program and a Part 2 program? Maybe you are you have done some Part 1 programs before. And the focus of the Part 1 program is to build up your technical knowledge in governance, in law, in finance, and in compliance. So it's more on the technical side of the professions. Now, for Part 2, we have 4 subjects, as you know, risk management, strategic management, and boardroom dynamics, and that sort of things. It seeks to enhance your understanding of the strategy, your risk, boardroom dynamics, or taxations. That is to say, the focus is not on that much on your technical knowledge. We assume that you have a basic knowledge already. So what you are being tested is your understanding of these subjects. In other words, you have to demonstrate that you understand the topics. By understanding the topic, it doesn't mean that you can recite the models, what is Porter's generic strategies, what are the Porter 5 forces. You are not asked about this technical knowledge or the knowledge on some of these modules. You have to show that you really understand how to apply these modules to the facts, to the case, to the problem. So that is something which is different. So they ask quite a lot of things that test your understanding rather than reciting the modules or the rules or whatever, you know. So in other words, they require you not only have a basic knowledge, but you are also required to show some understanding. You have to demonstrate to the examiner that you do understand the topic. You're not just reciting some of the things from the study guide. That is not enough for you to pass the examinations. Now, firstly, it would be always very good for you as a practice to check what has been updated for this syllabus. So, of course, you can go to the CGQP website, and there are always some notes on what is new, what has been changed. And it's lucky that we do not have, I mean, for this subject, we do not have a lot of changes. But for other subjects, there are quite frequent changes, just like Hong Kong company law. And then you have to apply those new rules and regulations to the examinations. But luckily for your subject, there are less changes. It's quite stable, but you are still advised to double check with this update of the materials and the announcement before you enter into the examination room. Now, let's move on and take a look at very closely at the topics and the learning outcomes. Again, as I have said, many candidates really do not read the learning outcomes carefully, because by looking at the learning outcome, you will probably guess what is being asked, what the examiner wants from you, you know. So there are 5 or 6 learning outcomes in here. These are the things that should be demonstrated in your answer. These are the things that are being tested in your examination paper, and you have to show that you can achieve all this learning outcome before you can pass your examination. So it is very important for you to have a general understanding of the learning outcome first before we move into the details. We look at the detailed content, the rules, and the strategic models, etc. So before we do anything about this, you have to understand what is this module about. So you can see in here, there are 6 of these learning outcomes. Firstly, you have to demonstrate an understanding of the nature and the importance of the strategy and strategic planning. So that is on section A. And as we can see later, there's always a question on strategic planning. What is meant by strategy, the different perspective of strategy. So from this, you can see that these questions ask you to show an understanding. So by showing an understanding, that means you are given the case, a scenario, and you have to apply these concepts to the case and scenario, so that you can demonstrate an understanding of the nature and the importance of strategy. So you have to bear this in mind when you do your revisions, or when you're preparing any answers, or you're doing your revisions. You have to bear in mind that you have to ask yourself, have I demonstrate an understanding or not? Or am I just reciting some of the models without demonstrating any understanding? So that is very important. The second criteria is critically evaluate the company's organization's environment within the context it operates. Again, you can see that this question requires an applications, because you have to evaluate. So what is evaluate? We'll look at some of these action verbs later on. To evaluate means that you have to discuss the pros and cons of the different solutions, the different aspects, so that you are not describing something, but you are evaluating the internal and external environment. I think for this part of the questions, probably students do not have much problem with this. They are able to see the external environment. They can pick up those from the facts of the case, as well as the internal environment. But still, you need to pick it up and discuss things which are something which is beyond what is said in the facts, in the questions. That is to say, you have to read through the questions and read through the facts of in the case, and see what is implied from the facts of the case about this environment, the external and internal environment. Now, the third learning outcome, as you can see in here, is to critically evaluate the company's culture, governance, purpose, in order to advise the senior management and the board or other governing body on the appropriate strategic approaches that would ethically serve the purpose of the organizations and its stakeholders. So there are quite a number of things in here. Section 3 by far is the longest topic, actually it's a section C. It requires you to spend more hours in your study in these sections. Now, as you can see, the focus in here is about the culture, governance, and stakeholders. So these are some of the keywords in this learning outcome. So you can of course see from reading the past paper that quite a number of questions are set on cultures, they invariably ask you questions on culture, and you have to well prepare yourself again before you go to the examination room. Now, fourthly, is about critically evaluate the strategic alternatives available to the company in order to advise the senior management on the board or other governing bodies on appropriate alternatives. So, in other words, in here, they ask you to evaluate the different solutions, strategies, what are the different strategies that are available to the company. So, in other words, in this question, in these sections, uh, you have to consider which one is a better solution to the company or not. So, in here, um, you have to consider different alternatives. So you don't have only one solution. You may have different solutions, and you have to consider different alternatives that is available to the company. And as you can see again from uh, learning outcome 3, 4, and 5, there's a point in that you as a governance professional or a company secretary have to advise the senior management, the board of directors, or other governing bodies, just like the different committees, on the approaches, on this strategic approaches. So you can see that questions will be asked on how you could give advice to these people about these topics. So that's about culture, alternatives, and the fifth one is the impact of your strategic choices as well. Uh, and the last one is to critically analyze challenges relating to the change management. So change will be one of the topics. This is quite a discrete topic, and probably you can identify easily if there's any change involved in the strategy and how you would manage the change. Different steps, different theories on the change management. I think you can spot that also easily. Now, what we are saying is that in order to pass the subject, you have to demonstrate all these outcomes that are being met from your answers. Your answer has to give evidence to demonstrate that you can do all these 6 different things. Is it difficult? To a certain extent, it is difficult to some candidates because for all these 6 learning outcomes, except for the first one, there's a word which says critically. That is to say, it demands something more than book work, something more than memory of the of the study guide, things from the study guide. When they say critically evaluate, critically analyze, things like that, that means you have to read, as I've said earlier, you have to read further from the facts of the case and see what is being implied from the facts of the case. And that makes the subject quite difficult, or more difficult than maybe the previous modules that you have studied. So what I am saying is that you have to do. You have to see what is being implied from the facts of the case. It's not just the case itself, not the fact itself, but something further, deeper from the case, something which is not written down from the case, but is implied from the case. Now that makes your uh, examinations being more difficult because you know you need to be more thoughtful about this sort of things. So we turn to the question of what is meant by critical evaluations. What does it actually mean? And what do they want to see from your answers about critical evaluations or critical analysis? So what actually do they want to see, and what do you need to demonstrate from your answers? So critical evaluation or critical analysis means you have to dig deeper and beneath the surface. That is from the facts of the questions. You have to go deeper from the fact of the questions, and you don't just describe what it says, but you have to uh, say why it is good, why it is bad, and why it matters. So it's about your thinking. You have to be more thoughtful. You have to be more inquisitive, and you have to be more precise. Uh, that's that's what they want to see from your answers. So it would firstly, of course, you have to understand the basic things first. So you can't do any critical evaluations or critical analysis without any understanding of the content. So you have to uh, firstly understand the key ideas uh, of the content. So the understanding is the first step only, you know. And then you look at the logic itself. Are there any assumptions, any gaps, or any contradictions? We'll go to some of these things when we look at the examination questions, but this is something general, you know. And what are the evidence that we have in front of us? What we were being told from the facts of the case? Are they relevant? Is it convincing, or does it support any of these assumptions? And then in critical evaluation, you have to consider different perspective. Why do this but not do the other things? You have to acknowledge the opposing viewpoints, and you have to assess why it's better for you to choose, say, differentiations and not the other uh, strategies. You know? So you have to consider different perspective and judging the implications, judging the significance. So, what impact does this idea have? So, does it connect with the broader concept? So, if you're given some facts or some strategies, you may need to think a little bit further and evaluate whether it's really it's workable. Maybe in the question they said something and they invite you to argue about these strategies. They may invite you to argue whether this a good strategy or not good strategy. You know? So what is required is the depth of your thoughts. So something which you can uncover from the surface. So you move beyond what is told from the facts of the cases. From the facts you have, that is to say, you're given the fact you have the pre-released reading materials, and you have to read deeper than what is being told. So, what's the implication of some of the facts uh, that you know that were given to you? Uh, so, I mean, a lot of candidates just read these release materials. Oh, I understand everything. I understand every word. I've sought out this or that, but the requirement is that can you read a little bit deeper, a little bit beyond the descriptions, and give your own viewpoint on this. your own interpretations on some of the facts? Are they supported by any of the evidence? And is there any clear flow of ideas? And are there any arguments? So what is your argument? What is the strength and weakness? And you weight these strengths and weaknesses fairly. And it's just not to say yes or no answers, but you have to give argument. I think that's more important. Do they give you any data that you can use this data to reinforce your argument, reinforce your points? So I mean that is very it's academic. It's more academic exercise, you know. So what we can see from here is that because this is a sort of learning outcome, so what they want is to see that you have achieved these things in order to get a pass. I've said this before. So what you will expect is that there will be questions on each and every of these topics. So when you do your preparation, you have to understand that, okay, since this is a learning outcome, and therefore this will be asked. One of the questions will be invariably asked about strategic planning. One of the questions will be asked about the environment. So you can actually guess that all these 6 big topics will be asked. They won't leave any topics not asked in your examination, because you have to demonstrate that you can achieve all these 6 learning outcomes. Outcomes means the result. You have to prove that you're able, just like cooking, you have to prove that you're able to cook certain dishes in order to satisfy the examiner, right? So, so just go through this again. So for the first learning outcome, the examiner expects you to have a clear explanation, a clear conceptual understanding of this strategic principles and relevance. So you should show that you can grasp not just what strategy is and not what strategic planning are, but how they matters in order for the organizations to success. So to success, you know. So maybe you can also link this with the real life, real world situations, so that you can demonstrate some thoughtful engagement with the topic. I mean that is probably what the examiner wants to see in your answers. You know, so you have to see how this planning will lead to the success of the organizations, and you can use argument from the real world cases to support your argument, support your thesis. So similarly, in learning outcome number 2, they also look for a critical appraisal of the internal and external factors. Probably you are very familiarized with these analytical models, the PESTEL, the SWOT, the 5 forces. I'm sure that you know all these things. These are quite simple and quite easy to understand. But what the examiner wants is not that you can recite what these things are, but you have to apply these tools. Not just to name the tools, but to apply these tools and comment on how these factors can shape the strategic decisions. And what they want is actually depth of your answers. You have to demonstrate analytical depth and well-supported evaluations. I mean, that is what they're looking at. So again, is your thoughts, your argument, which matters in here. I mean, it's the same thing for learning outcome three. Again, they require you to have an more in-depth analysis of the organization's elements. So something related to the culture, ethical considerations, uh, leadership, that sort of things. Something uh, uh, that is tailored for the leadership. So when you study these things, when you study these things, you have to consider the leadership as well. So your evaluation should address culture, governance, the purposes, and all how this culture, leadership, and all these things can influence the choice of the strategy in the company, and how it is related to the ethical standards, and how they are related to the stakeholders' expectations. So again, the examiner want to see from here is your judgment, is your practical recommendations uh, that can demonstrate your insight and integrity, and that is what they want to see. Now, the outcome four is uh, require you to have a comparative assessment of the different options that are available with some justifications. You have to justify these different options uh, and give a recommendation for the decision makers. In other words, you are you're given you have to give advice to the senior management or the board, and then you have to give reasons. Just like when you propose something to your boss, you have to convince your boss, and you have to give reasons. So reasoning is very important. When I say reasoning, that means you have to weigh uh, the strategies against different criteria. For example, is it feasible? What are the risks that are involved? I mean, when you are assessing the different options, you have to consider the risk uh, and whether these options align with the uh, company's goal or not. Uh, so what they are really looking for is your ability to make informed, logical choices and present them persuasively to the senior management and the governing body. So that is probably what you want, what you need to demonstrate. And fifthly is the learning outcome five. You you expect the examinations of the implications of the structure and control system. You have to link the strategies to implementations. So what the examiner is looking for is your understanding how the strategy can shape the operational design, including the systems, the governance mechanisms to support changes and things like that. So you have to demonstrate uh, a strategic eye for the implementation challenges and how you can manage those challenges. So that's impact organization impact. That means the structure and the control system of the organization. The last one will ask for the your insightful analysis of the change and the barriers that relates to change that stopped you from changing. You have to formulate realistic and strategic solutions. You have to formulate tactics, and your response should delve into psychological, structural challenges, political challenges that often obstruct the companies to change. So the examiner wants to see that you can offer an adaptive evidence informed approaches to lead the changes in a sustainable way. So you can see, I mean, I've gone through this in quite detail again and again. The reason is that these are what the examiner wants to see from your answers. And as I've said earlier, uh, there must be question on all these 6 topics. They can't leave one question, one of these topics not being asked. They will definitely have all these 6 topics in one examination paper, and that's why you need to prepare well all the 6 topics. You can't leave anything not prepared and go to your examination room. That would be quite dangerous. So, having said that, so we will look at the um, again the structure of the syllabus. You can see that in your syllabus, in the learning outcomes, you have 150 marks altogether in total. Probably the marks, how many marks? The marks allocations will be allocated according to the weighting in the learning outcomes. Right? For example, if the weighting is 30%, probably is around 30% of the marks of the 150 marks will be on say learning outcome number 3, right? Which is by far the largest topic, right? So let's go through very briefly with you the different strategy, different sections. Section A is about the strategic planning. As I've said earlier, it's about the nature and the strategy of the planning. So the theme of this of this learning outcome is that you have to understand how it is related to the planning. So before a company start off with any planning, with any strategy, and with any choices, any strategy, so it's the very beginning stage, how they develop a strategy. So, and this is 15%. 15%. What does that mean? So you can see about, say, 15% of the marks of the 100 marks may be allocated to this topic. I mean, most of the topics or the learning outcome are around 15%, except section 3. So this is section 2, so it's one of the easiest topic. It's about external environment, the capacity, and the competence of the company. It's a 15% by weighting. It's about 15%. Now, where's the question C, learning outcome C 3, or section C, is by far the most heavy part of the essay. They cover a lot of things. As I've said earlier, it's about culture, it's about leadership, governance, and the purpose of the organization. So I mean, this is the heavy part of the essay, of the module, and therefore you have to spend more time, I think, and go through these different modules, these different topics. I mean, very carefully, because this is one of the heaviest topic. More percentage have been allocated to this topic. Well, you can see that there are four different big topics in here, which is strategy and organization culture. As I mentioned, you can always see that there's a question on the culture in your examination paper. And then you have this leadership, governing bodies, and strategies, the relationship between the governing body and strategies, and expressing the organizational purpose, business ethics, and social responsibility. So again, very often you have see this question just pop up every time in the examination paper. Now the problem is that they don't just say, "Oh, I'm just asked section C, I won't ask section A." Sometimes they're very nasty. They ask question one, which cover section A, section C, or section D. So I mean, that's why you need to well prepare, because this could cover quite different things. So you don't just study section B without studying section A, because in our maybe later on I'll show you in the question. Actually, the questions are quite open ended, and you can discuss what is different aspects relating to strategies in one question. I mean, marks will be given if you give some reasonable answers. So that's why when we go through this learning outcome, this sort of syllabus topics, you have to be aware that from the question, which part is the examiner asking? Now, is it asking about section A, or is it A and B together, or A, B, and C together? So I mean that is quite common for they to combine different things together and ask a question that cover different sections. So I mean, these different sections, these different learning criteria or learning outcome, also give you some mind map that helps you to identify whether you need to discuss learning outcome 1, or whether you need to discuss learning outcome 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I mean, this just gives you a map to remind you, because in the examination room, your brain will be stuck, and then you need some guidance, And I think these 6 different topics are just guidelines, and you can ask yourself, are they do they want me to focus on section C, or do they want me to section B or A or whatever? So I mean, by understanding these learning outcomes or the headings or the structure, actually this gives you a framework for you to think in your when you prepare your answers. Maybe in the answers, when you start to think, should I cover A, B, and C? Should I cover D and F? You have to think more broadly than just narrow down passive analysis, SWOT analysis, finish. It's nothing like that. So you have to sit as if you are the company secretary, or you are the CEO, whatever, and you have to think more holistically, the different aspect of strategy. And these 6 different outcomes just give you a holistic view of the different aspects of strategy. And that is what you need to do. And this is what you need to understand. So I hope that you do have in mind these 6 different topics, so that you have a mind map that would guide you when you start to think, when you get stuck in your examination room. And these 6 different topics will help you about, do we need to answer this, or should I answer a little bit on culture? Should I answer a little bit on governance? Should I answer a little bit on leadership? should answer a little bit on ethics. I mean, um, as long as your answer is reasonable and you are not really um, reciting something, the examiner is very keen or very good in knowing whether you're reciting something from the past paper. But if you show your understanding, these are the things that I could discuss in the case, then marks will be given very generously. I hope that they would give you mark quite generously. So my point is that by understanding this learning outcome, I'm not actually wasting your time going through this learning outcome thing. Actually, I want this to be your framework, your mind map that helps you to, or a checklist that helps you to think of these topics when you try to answer a question. Should I answer something on culture, ethics, uh, responsibility, organization purpose, or the leadership, governing bodies, etc., etc. So similarly, should I talk something about strategic planning, the importance of strategy, different perspective of strategy, etc., etc. So by memorizing these 6 different learning outcomes, that will help you to uh, give you a structure in when you answer your questions. So 4 is again is not that difficult. It's only again it's a normal 15% weighting for this subject. So it's about evaluating different options, different strategy. And I think I've explained before what's meant by evaluating, what's meant by assessing. That means you have to give judgment, give explanations on the pros and cons of these things. And then we have this section E, which is implementing uh, strategy. So I mean, you can see from developing strategy, doing the analysis, the environmental analysis, to thinking about the company's culture, leadership, and all these things, and then you decide on which strategy you will be choosing, and then finally you have to implement your strategy. So this E, and actually this is just really as a chronological order, as about developing strategy, and this is actually all about strategic management. You can see even from this learning outcome 1 to 6, you can see the flow of this strategic management. All right, so you use the same flow when you do your analysis of your case problem with your facts of the case, and you just think about different stages in this learning outcome that would hopefully help you to give you a framework to do your analysis. So it's about organization structure, organization design, and the performance management. So that you are implementing the thing, you are you would see what are the challenges that. Oh, so that's this. Sorry, is it? Oh, I should got it wrong. Sorry about this. So this is not about change management. Change management is the learning outcome 6. I got it wrong here. That's a learning outcome 5, which is about the organization structure, organization design, and the performance management. So I think I will correct this later on. Sorry about this. That's a number 5. And the last one, as I've said earlier, is about changes. So you have to manage the change. There are 2 things in here: the people and the process, right? So you have to consider the the process aspect as well as the people's aspect. There will be people who feel, resistant to these changes. Now, having gone through really in quite details about these 6 learning outcomes, let's take a look at the marks allocations, which you may be more interested to look at. And you can see that all these questions, all this learning outcome, or all these sections will be asked. So somehow, it's just what I've said is the marks allocations is probably comparable with the suggested workload. So I mean, 15, 25, 3 marks will be asked about on section A, 14, 25, etc., etc. So of course, it's not uh, uh, an exact percentage, but you can see it's more or less the same thing. Sections. So you should spend more time on section C because this is more marks will be allocated on section C. But again, as I've said, you don't just learn section C without learning section F because that would be quite dangerous. That's not advisable for you to do so. But you can see that in any one paper, all these sections will be asked. There would definitely be questions on these sections, and there would definitely marks will be allocated. Because that's a syllabus. Knowing your syllabus is important because this not only gives you a mind map, it also suggests to you that how much time you spend on one of these topics, etc. Again, we can show you another example, which is the 2024 paper, June paper. In this June paper, you can also see that the marks allocation is more or less the same as the weighting of each of these sections. So by now, I think you can have your strategy, the examination strategy. Now that you've learned about strategic management, you should also have some strategies when you prepare for your examinations, when you prepare for the examination. So what strategies should you take when you do your revisions? That is uh, uh, my questions. So I mean, you have to. I mean, you have to really think. What is the strategy that you should use in when you start to prepare for your examinations? Um, for me, the strategy is very simple. You have to go through all the 6 topics, learn them, understand them, and know how to apply these 6 topics. Just do not leave any topics not revised. I mean, that's very common mistakes. You're running out of time. You don't revise a certain topics. I mean, that's understandable, but that is it. You still need to go through all the 6 things so that you have something to answer, to demonstrate in your answers. Right. So, can you think of the reasons why it is not a good strategy to skip some of the questions, some of the topics in your answers? In your revisions. I mean, why is it a bad idea to skip some of the topics? I mean, a lot of candidates really try to spot questions, and I better do some topics studied by heart and learn well, and then skip some of the other topics. I mean, uh, it's really it's a very risky if you miss any of these learning outcomes. If you do not revise any of this learning outcome or any of these sections. Firstly, obviously, because the topic that you have missed may actually appear in examinations. So if you skip any part of your syllabus, you are risking facing questions on the topics you have not prepared for, and you have limited your choices, and you cannot uh, uh, or if it is part of the question, part of 25 questions, you may lose about 10 marks on that questions as well. So I mean, this is not a very good idea to not revise all the content of this learn of the syllabus. Now, the other thing is that once you have something you miss out in your revisions and it appears in the examination paper, then you will get more and more anxiety. You will be more and more stressful. You have increased your stress level and anxiety if you find some questions that you have not prepared. For example, just take an example for change management. If you totally forget to study change management, and if it appears that in part of the question, you will get panic. You will get stressed, and that would also affect your performance for the other questions. So your inadequate preparations will often lead you to be panicked and to be very doubtful, and obviously that will pull down your marks as well. And then you need to answer well in other parts in order to pull up the marks that you have lost. And that is the situation. So if you don't have full understanding of the syllabus, you may struggle with questions that requires applications, right? It's more difficult for you to answer application problem, application questions. I mean, if you are unable to answer a part of the questions. And maybe the other disadvantage may be that if you don't know one topic, you may write too much on the other topic, and that is equally not very good, because I mean, people write a lot and they think they could pass, and in fact no, because they're writing a lot of nonsense. They're writing a lot of things which do not score them marks. When you come out of the examination, I've written 2 full answer books. Do you think that they must get a pass? Probably may not. I've seen candidates writing quite a lot, but these are nonsense and not to the point. So I mean, even though you write a lot, you think that you will get a lot of marks in some questions, but ultimately at the end, you overconfidence. Now, what is even worse is that if you do not prepare everything well, then you cannot handle complicated questions. Just like the fact or the pre-release case studies. These are really complex facts, and you have to really pick up the facts. So the examination tests how you can integrate your knowledge. So if you miss something, that means you cannot integrate your knowledge from different angles, and because that would because you don't have a full revisions. I mean that's a trouble, you know. And maybe those questions are easy mark questions, and then you miss your opportunity to get some easy marks questions. So I mean uh, that's also to your disadvantage, you know. And that and if it turns out that your grade is not what you expect, you will feel regret, and that's not very good. To feel more frustrated and demotivated in your study. So my advice, final words about this is that you have to study all the sections. You have to understand the learning outcomes. You have to understand what they want to uh, ask, and you can use these outcomes uh, as the mind map for you to, or checkpoint, checklist to help you to think of what are the issues. Do I need to discuss this? Do I need to discuss that? You know, and that also helps you uh, to uh, be more focused, especially for those integrated questions or more complicated questions. That will help you to generate some more ideas uh, instead of going nowhere. You know, you don't know what to answer, etc., etc. You know.
So the conclusions is that we should revise all the syllabus. We should not leave any part of the syllabus uh, not revised. So now let us look in more detail about the structure of the syllabus. Now, many of the candidates do not actually read this part of the syllabus. Now, what is the aim of the module? So if you understand the aim of the module, you may understand what the examiner want to see from your answer. So the aim of this module is to provide the elements, process, techniques involved in the development and implementations of organizational strategies. So what it says in here is that you need to develop the strategy and implement the strategy. They test you about whether you're able to use the various techniques, process to develop and implement the strategies. So that is what you will be asked about. Now, as a company secretary or governance professional, you have a very significant role to ensure the strategy fits the organizational purpose and is acceptable in terms of risk and is consistent with good governance as well as stakeholder requirements and concerns. So, in other words, you are asked to consider yourself as a company secretary or governance professional, and you will be asked about cases and scenarios about the role that you will be playing to develop the strategy of the company or to implement the strategy of the company so that the strategy fits the company's purpose. So that is why sometimes you see cases in the case or in the questions. You are asked to assume the position as a company secretary. So again, it says that the module explores the critical role played by company secretaries or governance professional as part of the senior management team, ensuring the integrity of the policies, system, and process that deliver the company's strategic purpose and objectives. Now, it also asks you about the obligation of directors and other people in the strategic planning. So apart from being the company secretary, the role of the other officers and employees will also be asked. and you should consider their roles as well. So the last point about this module is that you have to understand the ethical considerations raised by the development and implementation of the strategies, its impact to the reputations. So you can see very often there are ethical issues in the questions, and you have to spot this as the ethical issues. It could be related to the company's culture. It could be related to some other policies like whistleblowing policies, and you should spot that these are the ethical considerations that you need to discuss in your answer. The last bit is that this field of study is potentially very vast. So, and actually, it is true to say so because it covers quite a lot of different management concepts, covering from leadership, change, culture, and various management concepts as well. So it is too easy to overwhelm by the range of framework, tools, and techniques in existence. So there's numerous framework and tools that you could use, and sometimes you don't need to use all of them. You're only required to choose one to illustrate the principle, to illustrate that you're able to apply those concepts. They're important, but only in the political and cultural environment of the organizations. As a response to the need of practical reactions and decision making when confronted by the day-to-day problem which a company have to contend. So what they are saying in here is that you have to apply those various framework, tools, and techniques to the day-to-day problem. So it is a practical module in that they focus on the applications of these various techniques, tools to the day-to-day problem. So the model focuses on the component of the organization and strategy most relevant to the practice of the company secretaries or governance professional, enabling them to apply the concepts to the organizations in order to protect their reputations and promote the good governance and accountability to the stakeholders. So in other words, all it says in here as a summary would be that you need to apply these things to the practical situations. Now it says in here that the model places company secretary in very important positions. So from the governance, from the strategic oversight, to the governance integrity, to the team participation, to the ethical stewardship and stakeholder accountability. So the company secretary plays various roles in the strategic development and implementations. So what is your strategy in answering is that when you're given a case, you just think that the company secretary, as a company secretary, you are facing some real life problem, and how would you solve that? So it involves quite a lot of things, and you have to have the broad pictures of the applications of strategic management to the company. So start off with the oversight, the development and implementations, and the process of strategic management, as well as the monitoring things. To the human side, the people side, that you have to consider the leadership, governance, team cooperations, stakeholders, cooperations, empowerment, that sort of things. And lastly, it will be related to culture and ethical issues. So you should have this broad framework in your mind when you deal with the questions, because sometimes all these different aspects will be asked, and you are required to discuss various aspects of the strategy by the company secretary. Now let's take a look at some of the questions in here. You can see that in various questions, they ask about your role as a company secretary. So as you can see in 2024 question 1, it says, as a company secretary, you've been asked to prepare a lot of things, right? Pestle analysis and environmental analysis. So you're given a scenario, and you have to apply the pestle analysis to the scenario as a company secretary. In question 6, 2024 June, it says that as a company secretary, you have been asked by the board to explore how the issues identified above as the factors that will lead to the data breaches that would affect the company culture, etc., etc. So again, this is a question that asks about how the company secretary will help to build the company culture, or they would talk about the integrity of the company, something wrong with the culture that leads to the data breaches, and that sort of thing. So you're given the practical situations, and as a company secretary, you have to deal with these situations, and you have to deal with the situations and give advice to the board of directors. So what I can say in here is that this module is quite different from the traditional strategic management module. You may have learned about similar things in your university, but I have to remind you that the focus are a little bit different. Even though you have learned about something about strategic management before, the focus is quite different. Maybe in the traditional module, strategy module, they focus more on the competitive advantage, market positioning, or financial performance. Whereas in this module, the focus is more on the governance-centric strategic alignment with the organizational purpose, risk, and accountability. So you should see some differences in the emphasis. Traditional module will emphasize on a lot of theoretical modules. So long as you can explain those modules, you will get a good pass. But in this module, we want to see good applications of the tools within the context of the company. So they require you not just explain the modules, but to apply the modules. And maybe in a traditional strategy module, they don't look so much on the culture and ethics. But in this module, we focus on the ethics, and the ethical elements is integrated deeply into the strategic planning and delivery. And in the traditional module, they may talk more about the shareholders and customers, but maybe in this module, we look at the broader stakeholder issues. Maybe you have to consider the regulators and the community at large. So also traditionally, in the traditional module, they focus more on the line managers or the strategic team. But in these modules, you have to consider, apart from company secretary or governance professional, you have to consider the roles and obligations of directors, officers, as well as other people in developing the strategy. So what we say in here is that the model places the company secretary in a pivotal positions because they have to ensure that the strategy align with the company's purpose and risk appetite. So they are the one overseeing. They may not be the one who develop the strategy or they take part in the development of the strategy, but they have to ensure that the strategy aligns with the company's purpose and risk appetite. And of course, in terms of the governance and integrity, because company secretary, they have to safeguard the system, safeguard the policy and processes that support this strategic goal, make sure that complying with the laws and regulations. And because you're a company secretary, communication is very important. So as a key member of the senior management team, they have very strong influence in the strategy development. And you have to address the ethical issues and the moral implications when you execute your strategy. And also you have to promote transparency and trust through good governance practices. So this model is not just about business strategy, it's just a bridge between the strategy and responsible governance. So it equips you so that you can lead with conscience and not just competence. It's not just that you know how to do the thing, but you need to be a leader with ethical value. So having said that, I think the next part will be quite simple, and I will go through it very quickly because I assume that you should know about it very well. It's examination format, so you know that it's a 3-hour examinations. This is just the same for all the part 2 examinations. You have 15 minutes reading time, 4 questions in total, 25 marks each. Section A is based on the pre-release study case. You have to answer 3 questions out of the 4. And section B is not based on the case study, and you have to choose 2 out of 1 out of 2. So I don't think I need to talk about this. You know this very well. And finally, that is your strategy. What is your strategy? So, I mean, throughout the different diets, you can see the range from 30 something to 50%. I mean, half of you would pass the examination, half don't. So why is that half of those who cannot pass examinations? Well, the latest figure is for the June 2025 is 50%, so it rises again. Now, my question is, how can you ensure that you can get 50 marks in your examinations? Because if you can't get your 50 marks, then probably you will fail. Well, the advice is very simple. I mean, you have to answer 4 questions. You make sure that you have something to write in all these 4 questions. So 25 marks, half of them is 12.5 marks. So you just ask yourself, am I able to get more than 12.5 marks? Well, probably the safe range would be 16 to 18 marks, or even higher 20 marks. Now, it is really quite impossible for you to get 23 marks or above. It's quite difficult to get a full mark. 80% and 90% is quite difficult. In normally, you may get one or two questions. You may get a little bit higher marks, but it's quite difficult to get the high marks for all the four questions that you have answers. So you have to ensure that you have a safe pass, something more than 12.5 marks, maybe something in the range of 16 to 18 marks for all the four questions. So if you can choose a question that gives you a safe pass, then your chance of getting a pass is quite high. Now, the worst thing is that there may be half questions, just like this one. If it happens that, sorry, what is it? Sorry, just. So if the question is divided into two parts, all right, and you could not answer part of the question, say 10 marks, then what you're saying is that you are marking from 50 marks. That means the highest mark that you can get is 15 marks. And probably, if that's the case, your chance of getting 12.5 marks is very, very low. As you can see, if you want to get 12.5 marks out of 15 marks, that will be around 80 or 90%, which is quite difficult, normally speaking, all right? So my advice is that if you have a two-part question, or you see some questions that you are not that certain and you don't know whether you can have a good mark, then you just see if there are other choices. If there are other choices, then very good. Then of course you can go on with that. But the advice is that you should choose your questions very wisely.
Okay, having understand that our strategy is to have a pass of 50 marks. So let us look at what the examiners expect you to do, or what are their comments in the last 2 years. Here it says as a general observation. The general observation is that a notable proportion of candidates did not attend examinations. Now, obviously, why? Why is that the case? Of course, you will probably understand that they don't come to the examination room because they are afraid that they will fail in the examinations because they have not prepared their examination well. That is the most probable reason for them not coming. Obviously, there are some candidates who really have some problems that they cannot attend because of their work or because of other things. All right, but I think the majority of the candidates who did not come probably because of the inadequate preparations. So maybe just ask you to think about this. If you are new to this subject, you haven't learned about the subject before, how much time you need to prepare for this examination? Given that you have to study part-time, that is to say you don't have enough time to do your revisions except after office hour. And obviously, some of the candidates have to work very hard during the office hour as well. I mean, how much time should you spend to prepare for this examination. If you have not done anything on strategy before, you have not done this subject in your bachelor degree, I understand that there are some candidates who have different backgrounds. They do not necessarily have a management background or the business administration background. They may have some other background, so they may not have studied this subject before. So in that case, I just ask, how much time do you think uh, you need to have for your examinations? Some candidates told me, okay, I can be very diligent. I just use 3 months or at most 4 months to prepare for my examinations. Uh, my answer is unless you unless you study full time, it's quite unlikely that you will succeed, right, in your examinations. Uh, uh, I mean, self-discipline is very important. Unless you spend all of your after office hour in study, it will be quite difficult for a student, for a candidate without any prior knowledge of this subject to master it within 3 to 4 months' time. You need to read the materials, you need to absorb the materials, you need to understand them, you need to apply them, you need to do exercises. So all these things requires time, right? Unless you're super diligent, super smart, that is another story. But I would think that at least 6 months uh, would would be more or less uh, appropriate. Bearing in mind you have the 200 hours uh, guidelines for this subject. But if you have done this subject before, you have some knowledge about this strategies or strategic management. You have done this in your bachelor degree. Then how much time you may need to prepare for these examinations? I think at least 3 to 4 months is a minimum. Right? I assume that you still remember what is fortified forces, what is Porter generic strategy, what's Bowman's clock, etc., etc. I assume that you have uh, not left school for too long a period of time. You just need a very short time to pick up some of the things. So in that case, that will save you some time, but at least you need to have at least 3 to 4 months preparation. Again, you need to read the study materials. Study guide is very important. You need to understand them, refresh your memory, memorize them, and apply them to the scenario. Bearing in mind that, as I've mentioned earlier several times, that this is very different from the traditional model. Uh, you have to be aware of this. So uh, I mean, I don't know why these students or candidates were absent. I mean, but probably they may have overestimated themselves. They think, okay, I have done this before. I just take 2 months or 1 month or few weeks to do the study. For three to a week. All right, I just take a 1 week off and did a study. I think that should be enough because I've done this before. Obviously, this is not a good advice and not a good strategy uh, to prepare for the examination. So ultimately, many of them did not come because they know that they were underprepared for this examination. So time management is important, self-discipline is important in every public examinations. So don't overestimate yourself, right? Because you need to read the whole thing. I don't know whether you have pre-release materials examination before. If you've done something like that before, maybe it's a little bit better. If you don't, then you may need even more time to prepare for these things. So the second observation by the examiner is quite similar, and it says that many people could not answer well. The could not provide uh, full answers to all parts of the question, especially if there are subparts. I think I told you earlier, in one question, they may ask you something from section A, some material from section C, and some materials from section F. So probably because the students are not well prepared, they are just spotting the question, spotting the topics, that leave them some parts which they're not familiar with and they don't answer it, and therefore that would miss them a lot of marks. I mean, just to be frank, if you have 25 marks, you expect uh, if if half of the question you don't know the answer, then I would say that your chance of passing will be of that question will be absolutely low, absolutely low. I mean, if you have 25 marks, you only know part A, but not know part B, so you will fail in part B, and you could not get full marks in part A. So the full marks means part A is 12.5 marks out of 25. So since you cannot get half of the marks, then how can you get a pass? It's virtually impossible for you to get the full marks in any essay question. So basically, uh, will be bound to fail if you cannot answer uh, all the parts of the questions. It's different. If you know something, but you're not that familiarized with, you still have a chance to pass. But you just leave that section blank, uh, no answer to it, then it is very dangerous, very risky. And I think the chance that it's a failure will be very, very high. So my advice to most of you would be that you need to well prepare for the examination. I mean, that won't help most of you. You want to have a shortcut, and the answer is there's no shortcut for public examinations. You need to work hard for that. And if you try to spot questions, then you may be trapped. And I mean, most of the time you won't be that lucky to find all the questions that you have prepared, right? All the topics that you have prepared if you spot the questions. So this is something I think most of you know before, but you don't see the importance of this of having to prepare your examinations. I mean, some candidates tell me in other subjects that, okay, I just need to spot the question, read the past paper, and that is good enough. I would say very frankly that it's very different from some other subjects. Just reading the past paper is not enough. You need to understand the thing. You need to apply this concept to the cases, and that makes it more difficult because there's a level 2 module actually, so it's require more applications for it. Now, turning back, we look at some of the comments from the examiners in the examiner's report. It says somewhere in here that question 1, it says strategic analysis required, often partially answered, or lack of proper tools or benchmark. So partial answer, I've explained it because you don't know the the topic, or lack proper tools or benchmark. You don't know how to apply. Application is very important in this subject. You need to apply those techniques and rules and whatever to your problem. So you cannot choose the appropriate tools. That you will have very difficult situations. I mean, another difficult thing for this subject is that there's so many tools available, and you don't know which one to choose, and that is a problem. Whether you answer using this set of tools is it good enough, or your answer using the other set of tools is correct or not. And sometimes there's no right or wrong answers. If you use different set of tools for the answer for applying to the scenario, they're equally good as long as you can justify your your choice of the tools, and you can apply these modules properly. So again, in PESTEL analysis question 2, everybody knows what this PESTEL is. So easy, PESTEL. But again, you can't get good marks because they fail to connect to the case-specific issues. Again, this tells you that many candidates could not apply to the PESTEL, to the problem, to the case scenario. Of everyone knows as a social environment, economic environment, but what is the economic environment in your case, in your fact? What is a social issue in your fact? And you have not identified it properly. You cannot pick up the hints from the facts of the question properly, and therefore you fail. You fail to pick up the thing, and therefore you cannot discuss the factor in relations to the company's environment, and that is to say you can't get a good mark or good pass, even though you understand PESTEL. Right? Many candidates think that okay, I have answered PESTEL, that means I got full marks. That is not the case, and that's a misconception. Even though you know PESTEL, even though you know all these modules, if you cannot apply properly, there's a chance that you still fail in that sections, really. Well, stakeholder analysis is easy, and many students perform this very well. They know this quite well, so it's not a big problem to most of you. Strategic implementation and culture related things frequently misunderstood is the weakest across multiple sections. I think I've told you earlier that culture will all invariably be asked in the examinations, and the problem is that it's quite abstract, and many candidates do not see that it's a cultural problem, and they could not discuss this in depth. So I mean, so when you prepare your case study, you have to look at what is the cultural issues, what's the culture in that company, as I mentioned somewhere earlier, that you need to consider the culture. And then some other questions. 5 and 6 are question B. They are underperformed. They're structural suggestions or external strategy options. So that's an unseen part, and maybe you have not picked up it. So for the seen part, the case study, the pre-release materials, you have studied quite well, and you can do it quite well. But for the unseen part, you may be surprised by the questions, and and that is quite difficult. I mean, it's sometimes these questions are simple and straightforward, but sometimes not that easy. So we will look at some of these questions later on, but this gives you a reminder of the importance of applications and preparing your examination well. So these are the what the examiner expects from you, and you can see from here that these are the comments. Let's look at it. Misreading questions, repeated emphasis on candidates not fully reading or understanding what the question required, missing sub-questions or specific instructions, suggestions, structures, application of tools. Now, of course, you won't misread the fact because you were given the fact 1.5 months ago. Most of you have read it in quite detail, right, of the facts. The point is that when you come to the examination room, the examiner may ask something a little bit different from what you expect. You try to tip the questions, but the examiner asks the same topic, but they want you to focus at a different angle. Now, that is a big problem because many of the candidates will simply recite all they know about that topic, that model, whatever that they have prepared, and write everything down. But that's why this is a comment from the examiner that candidates did not read the questions properly because they don't understand what's being required. They thought what they have prepared is what the examiner required. But in many of the cases, this is not the case. What they have prepared is not what the examiner wants to see. So, I mean, candidates, when they went into the examination room, they just write down what they have memorized and put down their pens. I mean, that is quite dangerous because you need to think in the examination room. You need to consider what is really asked by the examiner. Just forget what you have prepared. And even though it may look similar, it's the same topic. They can ask something really, really different, ask you from a different angle. And if you miss that, it's quite easy to fail in that examinations. So that's why I say that they don't understand the requirement. You don't understand, you don't pick up the words. Later on, when we go through the questions, we'll look at some of the questions and you have to help you to do some exercises to help you to identify what is being required, what's being asked, right? So if you miss the sub-question or specific instruction, you're asked to suggest, you are asked to prepare a report to the board of directors and you do not do so, then probably you don't get a good mark. Now, the second failure will be a lack of applications. Right? They fail to link the theoretical models and the framework to the real life case scenario. And I think I have repeatedly said this before. You need to apply the models to the facts of the case. You have to link them together. You have plenty of time, 1.5 months, for you to analyze the case. And there's no reason why you could not apply it to the case. I mean, when you prepare your case, you actually need to find out what are the facts. For example, the past analysis. What are the economic issues in your case? What are the social issues in your case? You don't prepare your case just reading and understanding the case. You need to analyze your case as well, and that will help you in the application because once you're given the question, they may ask you about how about the application, and remember when they ask you about the application, it could be applied in a different angle as well. So you have to be watch out, what the question actually uh, wants from you. Good knowledge shown but weak in applying. So I think most of you don't have any problem in understanding what's meant by pestle, what's meant by sport, what's meant by purified forces. You know these things quite well already. So good knowledge. You know this, but doesn't mean that you can apply it. This is a level 2 subject, and the requirement is a good application, and which is quite difficult. It requires a higher level of things, right? Superficial content. Many candidates provide insufficient depth, miss critical elements such as benchmarks, stakeholder engagement strategies, or structural recommendations. So again, if you're asked to do something, you need to really follow the instructions, underline the instructions, because when you start to write, you forget about the instructions. When you finish writing, you look back to what you've underlined and ask yourself, have I answered this part as well? And have I given good answers? Right. So you need to underline the key requirement, uh, and after you have answered, you just ask yourself whether you have actually answered those requirements. And that's insufficient depth. Insufficient depth, that means you just look at the thing very superficially. You can't see the uh, implications behind the fact, which is quite difficult sometimes. They just say something, and then you have to see the implication. Maybe the economy is not that good. They're not making a lot of profit, and they may be suffering a loss. And the implication may be that the company may have to cut costs, and the employee will be affected. Some people will be laid off, and these are the implications. But they don't mention it in the question, or they just give you a fact. All right, this is what the managers are facing. All right, the profit decline, they're having debt to pay, they may have cash flow problems, right, etc., etc. So they finish off there and they put a full stop in there, but you have to see the implication of this problem and how the managers should solve the problem. So this is the part which requires you to have in-depth thinking, in-depth thought of the problem, right? So it's not just superficial. Oh, they don't have enough revenue, and maybe they can open a new branch and, do more, increase the market share. I mean, different things. I mean, these are not very appropriate answers in relation to the facts of the questions. So here are some advice to you as a candidate, and it's repeated in all the reports, in the 23 and 24 reports, that you need to read thoroughly the questions. You need to dissect the questions and highlight the key instructions before answering. That's what I've told you earlier. I mean, this is something you need to dissect the questions, break it into smaller points, and see what are the sub requirements. As just for example, if they ask about development, it's different from implementations. So implementation is different from development. So you have to highlight the key instructions. Do you need to give advice or what? These are different things. So make sure that you highlight the key requirements, as I've told you earlier. Strategic preparations linking theoretical framework explicitly to the case details. As I've given you examples earlier, you are given the facts, but you have to see behind the facts and think of this strategy, right? and you have to justify. You have to give reasoning. Why do you need to give reasoning? You need to give reasoning to convince the examiner that you do understand the thing. You're not reciting the thing. I mean, the examiner will be very hesitant. Do you just recite something from the past paper? Uh, they will be hesitant. Whether you really understand, they are testing your understanding. They're not just test your memory. Uh, Testing your memory is one thing. Testing about the knowledge is one thing, but testing about your understanding and whether you're able to apply is another thing. So you have to uh, uh, demonstrate the link to the case, and the third one is even more clearly uh, say that you don't just record a model. There's no use to explain what is meant by 4 to 5 forces if you don't know how to apply it and use it to solve the problem in the case. Practical application is important. This has been stressed a lot of time year by year, and you can see this in the examiner report. So it's I know that many candidates did not read the examiner's report. They think that it's not that relevant. As long as I know the things, that it will be good enough. But no, you learn from other people's mistakes. So these are the other people's mistakes, right? And hopefully you can avoid it by understanding this more clearly. Improve structure and recommendations, provide detailed suggestions, especially when asked for planning, organizational design, or stakeholder communications. So if you're asked to recommend how to do the things, then maybe you need a more detailed explanation. You don't just mention very generally, oh, we need to communicate with stakeholders, full stop. That may not be good enough. Maybe the examiner want to see how do you communicate with the stakeholder. What are the methods and how do you do this? What is your approach to communicating with the stakeholders? So I mean, many candidates just give very superficial answers. Uh, uh, and that is not enough. Sometimes you need to justify your answers, and sometimes you have to provide more detailed explanations. So, in terms of the strategy, I think you have to make good use of your 15 minutes reading time. You remember, you have 15 minutes reading time. You don't need to write any answers. So what you do is to underline the key things, dissect the questions, read it very carefully, and see how you could apply to the scenario, right? So that's your strategy. Now, this part is quite simple. I think as long as um, you've read the marking criteria, that's because sometimes the questions are a little bit flexible in the answers. So as long as you provide a good reasoning, a good justification, and even though what the model you have used is different from that in the marking scheme, marks will still be given to you. So don't worry about this. It may not be exactly the same as the one you see in the marking scheme, but if you uh, do not link to the scenario, if you do not know what is the model to be used, you do not analyze the thing, probably there's very high chance of failure. I mean, this is of general applications. You will get a pass if you can explain the concept of the subject matter. That's very important. You are not required to uh, to to just to mention the name. You have to explain what is it, show your understanding. If you just recite the name, how can the examiner know whether you understand or not? They don't. They don't. I mean, you just write out port of five forces. So what is it? Or you just know the name, or do you know the details of the port of five forces? So you have to explain the concept. Identify various points which is relevant to the scenario. Uh, you have to demonstrate your knowledge first. Knowledge first, application second. Right. So you have to understand the knowledge. Make sure that you explain all the answers clearly. Link the theory with the practice. When we say practice, we mean the case. The practice is that is your role as a company secretary. That is your role as a company secretary. Is your practice. The answers include good analysis of the approach in practice. I mean, again, that is very important because they're asking you to apply to the facts. If you're unable to apply the facts, you won't get good marks on that. And lastly is a merit distinction. You have a clear understanding. You identify the issues. You can describe the thing in good details. Good writing skills, good understanding, and good links between the theory and practice. In-depth analysis. So I think we'll cover some of these already. So this is a summary of what the examiner wants. So it's not just for this subject. This is applicable to all the subjects. I mean, there's a good combine of the subject matter, a good combine of the subject. So you have to demonstrate to your examiner you do understand the topic, you do understand the thing. Secondly, you have good ability to reason, good reasoning skills, good reasoning, and evidence of deep learning where required. Ability to draw on your experience on the wider reading, research, etc. So you can have some deeper research based on the facts in the case material. A sense of what is appropriate in the context, in the problem-based questions, good writing, good numerical ability. I think for us, numerical ability is not that important. We don't have a lot of calculations for you, but sometimes you need to interpret the tables, interpret the data. So that's part of this numerical ability. Effective organization skills. So organized well, presented well, time management, make sure that you have enough time to answer all parts of the question. So you don't leave any part which is unanswered. I mean, this is something very general that applies to all the modules, not just strategic management. Now, this is what the examiner expects. So they want you to pass. Many candidates think that they set the question to trick you, to make you fail. I mean, in fact, that is the opposite. They set the question to help you to pass. That's why they make it very clear what is required. All right, as we have seen in the earlier examples, they just mentioned that you have to do the. I mean, one of the examples earlier, the examiner actually asks you to do a PESTEL analysis relating to the external environment and that sort of thing. So they actually give you hints on what to answer, right? Instead of making you guess what to be answered. So they just help you to pass. It's just that you could not pick up the points, pick up the hints from the examiner. That is the big trouble. You cannot pick up the hints from the examiner, and then therefore you could not answer the questions well. Uh, so don't think that they're here to trap you. Now, one thing is that uh, they give you something. They hope that you can see something in depth more than the surface of the facts. This is not tricking you. This is not trapping you. It's a test of your ability of analysis, test your analytical skill, right? They give you some facts and they stop there. They hope that you can see the issues, the underlying issues. And many students could not. So you think that, oh, they set difficult questions to trap us. They are not here to trap you. They are here to help you to pass. They give you various hints. And later on, when you look at some of the questions, I will point out to you what are the hints from that from the examiner, what they want you want to see from your answers, and that is very important. Uh, the examiner gives you marks if you answer according to the questions. I mean, that is again true for all the topics. The examiners can only give you marks if it is relevant. If you're answering things which are irrelevant, uh, then they cannot give you marks. I mean, that is quite simple, quite straightforward, right? So if they ask you one thing and you answer the other thing, then obviously you won't get marks for that. I mean, I think we've seen some of the uh, examples earlier about the questions. So just a minute. For example, I think I just uh, go back to one of the slides earlier. As an example, as a company secretary, you have been asked by the chair to prepare a paper analyzing the external environment. So you should try. Oh, I am very smart. I also answer the internal environment apart from the external environment. So what do you think? Is it good? Could you impress the examiner? Obviously, it's not, because they only ask you to analyze the external environment. If you analyze the internal environment, maybe the examiner will think, okay, maybe you don't understand the difference between external environment and internal environment. And obviously, your answers, you spend maybe 5 minutes to write things on the internal environment, and all these things will not score you any marks. You don't have any marks for irrelevant materials. I mean, that is a basic rule, right? So they can only give marks if they're relevant. They cannot give you a mark for irrelevant answers. And that is the point, right? So make sure that you address what the examiner wants, and they will give you marks. If you are not addressing what they want, and obviously they cannot give you any marks for that. I mean, that's a ABC of marking. They have a marking scheme, and you deviate too much from it. Obviously, you don't get any marks. But I think that most candidates say that, oh, I have written 2 books of answers. Why is that I still fail? I mean, that's the reason, because you're not providing a good answers. So I think I don't repeat this. This is just what we have mentioned earlier. For those who fail because they don't read the question properly, they they fail to identify the issues. Now that is another issue, other thing. They give you the hint, and if you cannot pick up the hint, that means you cannot see that this is an important point for you to discuss. Now this is quite serious, because if you don't know what the question is asking, and you cannot discuss, then I mean that's a problem, because you don't see the issues to be discussed, and that's a big problem. You miss some of the point. The issues are spreading around the facts. Some issue may be in page 1, some issue may be in page 2, some issue may be in page 3, and you have to pick it up and identify these are the challenges that the company is facing, and you have to solve those problems. But if you fail to identify, you fail to spot the issue in page 3, you only identify the issues in page 1 and 2, that's not good enough for you to get a good mark anyway. Simply what they wrote in terms without what they knew about the terms mentioned in the questions, that means they just explain the thing, they don't apply the thing. Just like I told you, the candidate just give just write something they know, or they know environmental analysis must be external and internal, and they just write down everything they know about the analysis. So they're not addressing the questions, not follow the instructions, and cannot pick up the hints provided. So is the best way to organize your answer is to give to arrange your answer in form of different headings, section headings, which is in line with the question requirement. If the question requires you to talk about external environment, then you have to say what are the different environments. So you have to use the different headings. That will be very clear to the examiner that you understand what the question is asking. Do not answer the questions in the report required. I think I've given you the example earlier that as a company secretary, you have to write the report to the board of directors. So you have to write the things in a report format, to prepare a paper. So you have the paper prepared to the chairman of the board, or to prepare to the board itself, etc. So if you're asked to prepare a report, probably it should be in a report format. Sometimes they ask you to prepare a memo memorandum. Sometimes they ask you to prepare a paper for circulations and that sort of thing. So try to do it according to the format requirement. Sometimes they give you marks for that. I think I don't need to go through all these things. Most of these we have talked about this before, except this one, which may be that just pay attention to the hot topic. And actually, I've told you about this already. So that means the candidates just choose what they want to study and just ignore the other stuff. That is they just spot the questions, just spot the topics to study, and that is quite dangerous. As long as the examiner see it, they will be quite hesitant to give you good marks anyway. Reference, I think we have covered this already. And memorizing the past paper, and again, it's very dangerous because memorizing from the past paper, because the facts are different, the angles are different, and if you simply provide an answer to a different fact, probably that would be very weak applications. Even though the knowledge part is okay, maybe you can apply the model, you understand the model, but you fail to apply it properly. So that's the part that I would not advise you to memorize anything from the uh, past paper. Now, on the other hand, doesn't mean that you don't read the past paper. It's very important for you to read the past paper, to understand the past paper, and to see what's being asked and to see what is the answer. But don't memorize the marking scheme as if this is a study guide. I, I know that quite a number of candidates do think that, oh, I don't have enough time. It's better for me to memorize uh, the the marking scheme in 5 years or 10 papers. That would be easy here. No, I just read all the things in in the marking scheme. I hope that that would help me uh, to answer the questions. Try to do some shortcut. You know, you can maybe out of the whole paper, you may get 20 marks being spotted, but for most of the marks, probably uh, you will fail to identify the issues properly. So you simply memorizing the past paper is not good enough. You have to analyze past paper. You have to understand the past paper, and you have to read the marking scheme, understand the marking scheme. So we will go through some of the questions with you and some of the marking scheme with you, so that you can see what is required. Actually, in the marking scheme, they just provide something very general. In some of the marking scheme, it's not a very detailed marking scheme. They just give you a very general outline. You should think that that is what you need to write. Maybe that is a mistake also, because you need uh, uh, to write in more detail. They just write down a few points, and they expect you to write something further or elaborate the point in the marking scheme. So don't think the marking scheme is, even though you recite everything in the marking scheme, you will get 100 marks, and the answer is no. And sometimes the marking schemes are really too brief. I think it's quite brief, and you may need to to look at it more closely, and understand what they require you to write down in your answer rather than memorizing the marking scheme. So we have looked at quite a lot of the examiner's comment, and one of the most common comments is that they don't understand the questions, not reading the questions properly. So here are some techniques that you could read, help you to to be more focused on what is required from the questions. Now here, again, we look at the comments first. It says that it's critical that the candidates thoroughly read and comprehend the requirement. And again, this is just the same thing, that the candidates did not read the questions properly, did not understand the requirements of the questions. So you can see that, again, it appears in question 4, they misunderstood the questions, and they did not address some of the issues that were required from the question, just like a balanced scorecard content, communication strategy, and implementation. So they misunderstood the questions, right? So that was in the report 2023. And you can see in 2024, you have more or less the same remark. They can't fully understand the questions. They fail to understand what they're they're expected to discuss. In question 3, they did not give a recommendations of the organization structures relating to setting up a partnership. So you have to go back to the question to see what are the facts of the questions. But in all cases, you can see in here that it's a very common comment that appears year by year that candidates fail to understand the question. So how can we understand the questions properly? You know? Now here are some, I want to say the tips, but the general guideline is to understand this action verb, or we call it combined verb. Um, Sometimes in short questions, they ask you to explain, so you have to underline the word explain. You have to identify someone, something, or we need to discuss something or describe something. You know. So these are the combined verb for a lower level uh, questions. Question just simply asks you to uh, identify, explain, or describe something. Now, for a higher level work, they need you to evaluate. We'll go back to look at some of these things later on. They require you to prepare something, to prepare a report, to prepare an account, to give advice on something, to analyze something, and to recommend something. So if these are the combined verbs or combined action verb, then you may need to, in your answer, you may need to show that you have done an evaluation. You have to justify why you reached a conclusion. If you're asked to prepare a report, then you have to uh, write in the format of a report. You have to prepare a report, stating logically, step by step, what are the things in the report. If you're asked to give advice, then you have to give suggestions based on your judgment, based on your views, right? You have to give advice. You don't just give advice to do something without any justification. You have to convince your boss um, why you give such an advice. When you're asked to analyze something, that means you have to examine in depth and consider different aspects of of the issues in here, right? Who, what, where, when, which, why, and how. So you have to consider some of these things or all of these things together uh, uh, in order to provide a deeper and fuller uh, analysis. If you're asked to recommend, then you have to offer different procedural things. You have to offer routes or other good practices. What are new procedures or what are new practices? You know? So this is a new recommendation. Again, you need to justify your recommendations. You don't just give a recommendation without referring to the reasons why you give such a recommendations. Now, here are the action verbs, and you have to uh, be familiarized with these action verbs, so that when you start to uh, before you write your answer, actually you have to underline this action verb. So we do a very simple exercise on this. You know, now you are required uh, to write any environmental analysis. So I give you 6 questions in here, and I want you to underline the action verbs and state what the examiner expects to see in the answers. Right? So I just pause in here for 2 minutes and see if you can underline the action verb and just write down some notes on what they expect what the examiner expect to see in the answer. You are not answering the question, right? We're not talking about the content, the detail, the substance of the answer. We're just by just looking at the question itself, what you are expected to write. in your answer. Just write down in general what you're required to do, right? Now, okay, so I will pause for 2 minutes or maybe 1 minute if you know. You will and we will look at the what you have done and see if you have correctly identified the keywords. Okay, so just 1 minute. Okay, so 1 minute. I hope that this is similar to your examinations conditions. You have 15 minutes reading time, and when you read the questions, make it as a habit to underline these action verbs. Obviously, I hope that your answer is more or less the same as my answers. So the first question, what you need to undertake the analysis. So question one requires you to undertake an analysis. So you should understand the requirement, then probably you will answer according to the requirement, and you won't be straight off, right? So you will be in the right track. But you don't undertake the analysis, probably you won't get any good marks. So question two is to use the tools to assess the various options. So you have to assess the options and provide the recommendations, right? So you have to recommend something, assess something, and to provide something. Now later on, we'll discuss in more detail what do the examiner want to see from by using these words, right? Examine the organization design considerations and provide recommendations. That is more or less the same. You have to examine the situation first and provide or give recommendations. And then question four is on drafting of some statements and utilize the SWOT analysis to inform your proposal. So use the SWOT analysis to inform your proposal. 4B requires you to propose ways to use the Spotlight scorecard and evaluate the company's progress. So two things in here, propose ways. So when you say ways, there must be more than one way, several ways, all right? And to evaluate the progress means to assess whether the progress is on the right track or not, and things like that. Question five is to propose something and discuss something, right? Propose how to develop a thing and discuss the risk management thing. Question six is to explore the issues identified and then propose something. So propose, recommendation, suggest are more or less the same thing. And you can see this is what the examiner wants you to do, is to give reasons to propose something, to recommend something. I mean, so these are the very common, we call it as uh, action verbs, or undertake something, assess something, provide something, examiner, draft, right? Utilize something, propose, evaluate, develop, implement, discuss, and explore, right? So, I mean, each of these will have a little bit different in meaning. Some there's different requirement. They want to see something a little bit at a different angle when they say provide or just examine, right? So maybe you have to understand what they want, all right? So let's go back to the first question again. Undertake an external environment. So undertake, uh, so this is the first question. Undertake the external analysis. I mean, that means you need to um, complete the task, complete the task of analysis. So probably in your answers, you ask yourself, have I done the analysis? If you have done the analysis, then you have undertaken the external analysis using those environmental tools. So, so what the examiner expect from you when you say undertake uh, the analysis is that you have to apply the PESTO tool or the trend analysis or other tools. You don't just describe the tools. You have to apply and analyze how the external factors is relevant to the case. So that's called undertake the analysis. You know. So the second question in here is to assess. Assess means to evaluate critically, not just to list something. So when you are asked to assess the various options available, then you and later on to provide detailed recommendations. So what the examiner expects from you is to evaluate the different options. When you say the different options, maybe for option A, what is the strength? What's the weakness? Is it feasible or not feasible? What are the constraints and that sort of thing? I mean, you're not simply stating the options. You need to consider the pros and cons of the options, the limitations, or the constraints of these various options. And the second part is just to provide a recommendation. So you have to give recommendations to make sure that in your answer, you have done the assessment and you have provided recommendations. So in your answer, there's a big whole section on assessment, a big whole section on uh, recommendations. So that will help the examiner to know that you understand the questions first, and then they can mark it according to your presentation. So you have to present a clear recommendation, and these recommendations must be actionable according to the facts of the case. So, for example, if the company is running short of cash, then you cannot recommend them to open a new market, open a new shop, etc., etc. You know, that's not feasible. So your recommendations must be realistic, more realistic and more practical. You know, to justify your recommendation. Sometimes it could be justified based on the SWOT analysis or some other analysis. So it's up to you to use whatever analysis to justify your conclusions. Now here they examine the organization design. and provide recommendations. Again, so after the examination, then the recommendation is based on your examination. You don't give a recommendation which is suddenly comes up out of the air and nothing to do with your examinations. So the examiner expects you to explore the design elements, right? Maybe explore something like reporting lines, coordination structures, and then suggest something that is aligned with the strategic goal. That's what it meant by examine and recommend. The recommendation must be based on what you have examined, and that is the most important point. Fourthly, this question asks you to draft a mission statement that's quite easy and utilize the analysis to inform your proposal. So what the examiner expects is to draft a new or original statement that reflects the strategic clarity. And then you use this SWOT analysis to support your proposal and your connected internal or external factors to your missions. So that is to say your mission and visions have to be related to the SWOT analysis. I mean, you have to use your SWOT analysis to support your proposal. So I mean, again, this is the other way around of asking you to give recommendation or justify a recommendation. And here they ask you to use this SWOT analysis to justify your proposal. I mean, and then, I mean, it's very clear that there are two parts in these questions, and marks will be given to each of the parts. If you don't utilize the SWOT analysis, or you just write down a SWOT analysis without using it in relations to the proposal or the missions, then you still don't get good marks. Again, it says in that propose how is the 4B propose how a balance scorecard could be used to evaluate the company's progress. So again, you can see that it's more or less the same. You design a meaningful way to apply the scorecard and how it could track the strategic objective with relevant, well-chosen performance metrics. So that's the relationship between the balance scorecard and evaluations. So you have to, so the balance scorecard must be practical, must be meaningful, so that you can see if the progress is aligned with your objective. Propose how Mike could develop and implement. So your proposal is related to the implementation and development of this strategic plan for greens, and discuss how the risk management safeguard reputations and examine the major source of risk. So probably there are 3 parts in here, right? The proposal, how you develop and recommend. Maybe I'll put it in here. It's one thing, recommendations. Let me see if I can do it. Develop and recommendation is one thing, right? Discuss. So these are 2 questions together. And examine. I forgot to underline the word examine. So you need to examine the major sources of the risk. So you have to examine the source of risk as well. So what the examiner expects from you in this question is that you have to propose some plans which are feasible, workable, actionable plans. So you have to propose this strategic plan which is actionable, a realistic plan. And then you have to outline the planning process. You have to outline how you will implement the thing. Sorry, just a minute. Okay, how you will I mean when you propose a feasible plan, you have to develop outline of the planning process, how to implement. You have to consider the timeline, and you have to discuss how the risk will affect reputations and how the sources of risk. So there are quite a number of things in here. So that you have to address in your answers. And finally, is to explore how the risk factors affect the culture, right? And propose something new strategy. So again, it's explore. That means you analyze the thing first, and then from your analysis, you draw conclusions, and that's you explore something. So again, when we revise this, these are very, very common action verbs. So what they want from you when you ask you to undertake, that means you have to conduct a task, to execute a process. You have to use the right tool, for example, scenario planning, pastel, whatever, and apply to the company's context. So you have to apply this when you undertake this. That means that you have to apply these tools in the company's context and identify the patterns, find out the implications, and how these external factors affect the strategy. So similarly, when you're asked to assess the various factors, you evaluate critically the factors. You don't just list the factors. You break down the strengths, the weakness, the benefits of these things, and then you use the different models in relation to the strategy. That's like Porter genetic strategy, whatever, to use the models, and then you compare the alternative, and you have to justify your recommendations. So you were asked to provide a detailed recommendations. That means you have to give a clear, actionable recommendations. So I mean, this is very important because there's a practical questions, a practical exercise. You need to provide a practical solutions to the problem. When you are asked to examine, that means you have to dig a little bit deeper into the complexity. You don't look at the surface of this. You may need to identify the key themes and how they're interrelated, and you use different framework like the McKinsey 7S or whatever, for the implementations, to provide implementations. When you ask to draft, that means you have something which is original. You don't copy. You have to make something new. So you have to use structure like the vision is, the mission is, whatever, and see if there's any wording is certain. They bring to uncertainty, which is not that good, So you have to link it with the SWOT analysis. So that's what you're required to do. To draft something which is original, and then you utilize the SWOT analysis. So you apply them is you apply. You don't just recite it. And then you go on to propose something. So you suggest something which is thoughtful, something which is strategically actionable. Um, and then you weigh off the trade-off. What are the trade-off? And explain how your ideas really can work out. It's a practical solution. It's a practical answers. And then you have this evaluations and develop, explore and develop questions. So when you evaluate, I think you need to use the KPIs. I think somewhere when you say evaluate something, you need to use the KPIs or balance scorecard or whatever to show the progress of the strategic. It's about implementations. And when say you need to develop, probably you need to design a step-by-step plan. You lay out the phrase, different phases, right? Maybe it's a goal setting phrase, resource allocation phrase, timeline, and think about this. So all these are very practical questions. As you can see, it's not a question that asks you to explain. It's not a question that asks you to describe. It's a question. It's a question. It's a paper that asks you to give practical answers to a given scenario. I mean, this is very important, and you have to realize that this is uh, the the essence of this paper is that you are a company secretary or a government professional, and you are asked to work out something which is practical, give a practical solutions, give a practical recommendations to the company. And invariably, most of the question will be set will be in this setting, right? So you have to bear in mind that it's not just simple reciting model things, but it is a more complicated thing that you need to apply to the case problem. And if you cannot do that, if you cannot give something practical, you cannot explain it in terms of this SWOT analysis, you won't get good marks. So when you finish your work, you ask yourself, have I drafted that thing? Have I utilized the SWOT analysis to do the thing? Have I assessed the thing? Have I given a recommendation? So this gives you, actually, this gives you a checklist as well. This is a checklist that helps you to see if you have actually answered the questions. So the best way to present your answer is that you have one paragraph with a clear heading, assessment of the different options. And then you have the different options and then different assessment. And then detailed recommendation. And then you have recommendation 1, 2, and 3, etc., etc. So when you present your answers according to this, the requirement of the questions, that will help the examiners to see if you really understand the questions and to mark according to this requirements. So to make their life easier, and then your life will be easier. Okay. So thank you very much. So this is about very general techniques in answering questions in preparing for your examinations. And next we will be looking at each section individually. We'll look at each sections one by one. We'll firstly give you an overview of the content of those sections, and then later on we will look at some selected questions on those sections. Right, so that ends the first part of the presentation. Thank you.